Okay, so here we are in Nuke. I'll assume that if you're watching this chapter that you already are familiar with how to use Nuke, so we're just going to get right into it. Let's drop a read node down and navigate over to where our actual files are. All right, and there it is. So here it is. These are the frames that we rendered a minute ago. Looking cool still. Now, these EXRs, they have all kinds of, they have all the other layers inside that we were looking at back in the mplay view. So let's shuffle those layers out. The shuffle is going to say, hey, read from that image plane, so direct emission, for example, take the RGB of the direct emission and output it into our overall RGB and A, of course. So there it is. There's our direct emission. Let's call it fire. That's, in our purposes, that's what it means now. What else we got? We got to get our direct light out, or rather our skylight out, which is our environment light. Remember that. We need to get our key light out, which was called the, oopsies, gotta plug it in first. You gotta get that sunlight. That's what's the key light. Cool. And just make sure that it's there. Cool. And finally, we need to get our volume light back out, aka our scattering business. Cool, so I'm just gonna call that vol. Now, I've been saying that this is simply all of those other image planes added together, and now it's time to actually make good on that. So if I plus all these together, look at that. If viewer 1 is this, and viewer 2 is this, 1, 2, 1, 2. Check this out. Nothing's changing here. What is changing though would be, oopsies, actually our alpha is different. This is what our alpha should be from the original image, and our new alpha looks like just the alpha of the fire one, or rather of the, well, I guess it's just all of them added together. And I changed the name of that somehow. So even before we go any farther, just so we don't forget, I like to put a copy down. So we're going to say copy the alpha from this one up top here to this one on the bottom. And if you don't already know, I was pressing Control in order to make these little joints show up. Great, so now we definitely have the same alpha, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, and the same RGB. Wonderful. So let's save that. So what's the first order of business in terms of what we're going to do here besides keep renaming nodes? One of the main things I'd like to do is bring the key light down. And to do that, let's actually view the output here. Cool. So now we can control the color of the smoke independently of everything else. We don't have to keep re-rendering it or anything like that. So 0.3-ish, right in the nose, is pretty good. We could do other things, like we could actually tint it if that was relevant. Maybe this should be cement, cement dust or something like that. We could always change that color or something like that, whatever. I mean, in this case, it's soot. It's dark soot. So we don't really need much in any way of changing that, unless, of course, we wanted it to be a little warmer because of the sunlight. I mean, the possibilities are endless, but this is fine for now. Another exciting thing is this being able to control the scatter independently without having to re-render everything. So your scatter will probably have, it'll be a little pixely and whatnot. If you do your HQ render, it will have less pixels, but as we had said in the last chapter, I ended up skipping that because it was going to take forever and a day. My computer's old. So blur. Blur is pretty viable. It's actually a pretty good idea here. I mean, this is too much blur, but just like the smallest amount of blur, like just maybe even like 2. I'm gonna press D here to disable it. See how it's blurring it just a little bit? Just enough to take the edge off of that. So now when we look at this in here, you can see it goes from having these pixels to being it blurred out. Because it is a scatter, essentially, it's okay to do a blur to that, I would say. So what else we got? We've got our environment light. We can bring that up. Now that we've brought the key down so much, maybe we would bring this up just a smidgen, 1.1 or something like that. Now it starts to be interesting to look at the original and look at where we're going. No, just a little bit darker so far. The fire. The fire looks pretty good. And actually, let me go to the frame that we've been looking at. That might be helpful. Well, no, I'll just go around. So we have this yellows and oranges and reds, and that's pretty cool. I think I might want to bring them a little bit closer to each other. Not have maybe the range be so wide. Maybe to give it kind of a filmic look, I'm gonna mess with the saturation. So for that, I'd like to use a hue shift, and conveniently, it's already on the red axis. And the axis means that I can control the saturation of just, of that color and the people that are close to it. So I'm gonna bring it down somewhat to like that. So now we lost some of our red from the fire itself, but we're still gonna have our red from the volume light over here. But overall, it's definitely more orangey, more of a fiery fire look. I forgot, actually, while we were over here, this volume light, we can make it brighter, especially now that we've blurred it. We won't see like the pixels, individual pixels getting brighter. You might even want to go super high, like that. That might be a little too high. Maybe something like that. Now that's looking cool, isn't it? So now we've got this kind of life underneath the skin. So here it is without it. No, it's kind of stuck now. There we go. So that's it without it, and then putting it back in. You can really see the glow on the walls down here, which is pretty cool. See like the wall catching the light from the source of the fire down there. So it's going boosh. All right, so looking at this, maybe just a couple more tweaks and they'll be ready to go. Maybe we never actually ended up giving our fire here its own grade thing, so I'll throw that in now. Let's see, maybe we'll bring it up slightly just so we can feel like we did something with it. Cool. Something like that. We're also going to want to add in glow, which is a nice little widget here. The glow will add, it'll add literally that. It's going to add this kind of, glowiness on top of our fire here in this case. And furthermore, it's limited by the tolerance. The tolerance will say for the incoming image, threshold it. So only keep the values of brightness that are higher than this number. So the higher I make this, the more it's going to limit it to just the bright parts of our image. So something like maybe a third of the way up to just keep these bright pockets. It's also clearly too bright, so I'm just going to bring it down substantially, something like that. The saturation's fine, and there you have it. So it's just a subtle little effect. You'll see it especially more here earlier in the animation. And if you're interested, you can always just isolate the glow, go to like effect only, and just see. That's what it's adding at. You can see essentially it's just taking the brightest parts of the incoming image, blurring it, and adding it back on top. Cool. So there you have it. I'm just going to jump back over to our frame 37. It's doing a little bit still here, down by the bottom. You get the idea, I think. So save that. So now's a cool time to say, what was our image before and what is it now? Look how different we made it. But I think for the better. It's more cinematic now. Dark smokes, the bright lights, the scattering every which way. This would look even better again if we had a less noisy render, but you get the idea in any case. We still feel all the shapes from here. All these dark spots now are kind of dark oranges and things because of all the glowing. And all of this, it just fully integrates the fire into the smoke now to see them interact like that. Very cool. So that alone is it would be worth rendering, and perhaps we will. Before that, I just want to make a checkerboard real quick, because it's always a good idea, to measure against a background. So So I just changed the format to the size of our actual frames here. Let's put them, we did that wrong. Shift X to go the other way. So there we go. So now it's on top of this checkerboard background. And that's it. Let's just get right to writing that out. Right there. Right there. So just press W to do that real quick. Go there. So yeah, I'm just gonna save. I'm gonna run these frames out now, and we will reconvene in a minute. All right. So that comp finished, and this is what it looks like. Pretty cool. You know, if we had like a scene to actually integrate it into, we might have light and shadows and whatnot casting onto the ground around it. But even still, you can see lots of cool stuff like the light, you know, casting, being caught by the smoky bits. Obviously, this inner wall stuff from before. Even the wispiness. These kind of shapes are really cool, all up in here. Yeah. Overall, I'd say this came out pretty good. Yeah, it's all comes down to artistic decisions from there. You know, a lot of times you're trying to match what the camera is capturing, the way the camera is capturing light in the scene in terms of deciding when to blow light out or things like that. Lacking that, I just went this way. But yeah, it certainly came a long way from the original image here, and I just wanted to stress that above all else, and just how much we were able to push it more towards this cinematic look from the original elements, and that was by, you know, being able to modify each of our constituent pieces. So there you go. Yeah, so that's effectively the end of this lesson. I'm going to do in one more chapter now, show you how to do the same exact comp basically in Houdini's comp now as well. Cool. See you over there.